Hey, we welcome in Jim Callis from MLB.com and MLBpipeline.com. And Jim, it was a pretty cool day for Oriole fans, I know, recently when MLBpipeline.com ranked the Orioles fifth in organizational rankings. Man, that's a nice move up. I think when I talked to you about this last year, I believe it was number 8. So that's pretty good company. I mean, and we've seen it coming, I guess, for a number of years. The Orioles have kind of been on a slow and steady rise. What helped them get to 5?
Yeah, and it's interesting. I went back and looked. When I started Baseball America toward the end of 1988, Steve, and they started ranking organizations. Alan Simpson did back in 1984, and I went back and looked in Baseball America's rankings, and then at MLB.com we started ranking the farm systems only in 2015. The Orioles were never, when I was at Baseball America, even the days before I got there, they were never higher than 8. That was the highest they've ever been. They'd only had, I think, that's what, like 37 years or 38 years we're talking about. They'd only been in the top 10 like 5 times. And yeah, they are on the upswing. And I mean, I think it's easier to build a good farm system when you're in a total rebuilding phase. I mean, that's no great news, but I mean, I think the biggest factor has just been their first round picks recently. They had Adley Rutschman, number 1 overall, Heston Kjerstad, number 2 overall, Grayson Rodriguez was number 11 overall, DJ Hall, Ryan Mountcastle were earlier first round picks. They've had some deeper drafts. They've made trades. I mean, obviously they're trading veterans for prospects rather than the other way around. They, after years later than they should have, are starting to get involved internationally, which probably won't pay off for 5-6 years down the line, but it was a step they needed to do. And the system just has more top end talent and depth than it's had in a while, really.
Pretty exciting. And I think, Jim, what's one thing that's helped, and you tell me your opinion, yeah, of course, top end talent, that drives a lot of this. But some players who have been in the back end of the top 30 drop off as they trade and acquire and draft. And it seems to me they're getting better at both ends of the list.
Yeah. So I don't do our Orioles system personally, but I know, like, from doing systems that aren't good, you sometimes you're like, oh, like, here's a reliever, or here's a guy who's a 4th or 5th outfielder, like guys who have clear flaws, but you need 30 guys on the prospect list. And, you look at, the Orioles just last year, with Kjerstad and Westberg and Haskin and the trades they made, you wind up knocking 6 or 7 guys off the bottom of the list. And all of a sudden the bottom of the list looks a lot stronger too. I mean, they have guys in the middle, they have guys who aren't on the top 100 yet, like Gunnar Henderson and Jordan Westberg, who, would have ranked in past years probably 2nd or 3rd on their list. And they got 5 top 100 guys right now. And you got guys in the middle of the list like Taron Vavra and Hudson Haskin and Kevin Smith, who are all in the teens, who would have been easy top 10 prospects, say 5 years ago. And yeah, I know, like, when you rank a farm system, and look, it's entirely subjective because you're ranking these 200 players versus 200 players from 29 other organizations. And nobody, even if you're a team and you have everybody, all your scouting reports on computer, nobody can do that with great precision. I always say, the top 5 or so farm systems you can identify, and the bottom 5 or so, and then the middle 20 could turn out in any kind of different fashion in the long run. But all that said, you're accounting for all these factors, and it's quality and quantity. Now, I personally put more weight on the quality because I think you win with stars. I always say, like, the 2005 White Sox were maybe the last World Series champion that didn't have superstars. They were just kind of had no holes everywhere. They're just a solid team all the way around. But the quantity, the quantity matters too, because if you get to the point, you look at what the Padres are doing right now, and they were our number 1 ranked farm system for a few years. You get to the point where you're ready to win, and having that depth allows you to go make trades to help your team. Like if let's say the Orioles just had those 5 first-round picks, and they were top heavy, and behind them there wasn't much going on. Well, when Adley Rutschman and Kjerstad and Mountcastle are all established in the lineup, and Grayson Rodriguez and DL Hall are in the rotation, you're still going to have a bunch of holes on the team you're going to need to fill, whether it's from homegrown players or making trades. So the depth does matter. And then, as you get through the cycle where you start to get ready to win, then that gives you fodder too. But I do think, having Adley Rutschman, I hadn't thought about this. Like who was the last Orioles prospect who was as good as Adley Rutschman? Probably Machado, I guess. I don't think they've had a guy that good. And I mean, same stage of their careers, if you were just grading out tools, I'd argue that Adley's probably a better prospect than Machado. I mean, they're very comparable, but Adley's probably a better prospect because he's a catcher. You just don't find catchers that can do all the things Adley Rutschman can do. But they have so much more depth behind Adley Rutschman than they did when Machado, was the top guy in the system.
I think Matt Wieters is the only Oriole ever that's been number one on a top 100, I think. And Manny wasn't, and Adley's number two now, so we'll see.
Yeah, no, you know what? I was gonna say Ben McDonald wasn't. Like he wasn't, because he also, I think we did our first top 100 prospect list at Baseball America in 1990. And Ben McDonald might have been 2 or 3. Steve Avery was number 1. So yeah, I think Wieters was, and people always, I'm sure you've written about too. You probably asked me about the Wieters. Hey, Matt Wieters was supposed to be the superstar. Why should we believe in Adley? Well, one, Matt Wieters has had a really good career for a number 1 overall prospect, and 2, no knock on Matt Wieters. I just think Adley Rutschman is a better defensive player and a better hitter than Matt Wieters. I think the power and arm strength is similar, but as good as Matt Wieters has been, Adley Rutschman's better. Like he's got the best catching tools I've seen in a prospect in 30 years of covering this stuff. He had better all-around tools than Joe Mauer, who's more athletic but didn't have anywhere close to Rutschman's power coming out of the draft, and he had more impact in his bat, and he was more polished defensively than Buster Posey was.
And less talk of Grayson Rodriguez at number 2 because Adley carries such attention to him. It seems to me, Jim, this kid's really on the incline. There's so much to like about Grayson. There's size, there's smarts, he's driven. We haven't even talked about the quality of his pitches yet. Add that package together, this could be a special kid.
Yeah, and you're talking about a guy who was the 11th overall pick, and he's better than people thought he was, and he still won 11th overall in the draft. Now, I think at the time, there was some like he maybe went a little higher than people expected. I mean, he was going to go. I think people thought he might have gone closer to 20 than maybe 11, but the stuff was there. But like he wasn't considered. He wasn't raw, but he wasn't considered particularly polished. And then you look at what he did in low A ball in 2019, he looked really polished, and you had power to him, but there wasn't a lot of finesse. And now he's got a really good changeup. And I mean, like a bunch of guys, I think if we had a 2020 season, he's probably in Double A by the end of the year. They kind of tried to pump the brakes a little on him in 19. And you're right. It's funny because Adley is so special, and he's number 2 on our prospect list, and I mean you could argue him number 1 even over Wander Franco, but like everybody focuses on Adley, and you forget about Grayson Rodriguez, who's one of the top 10 or 12 pitching prospects in baseball.
Now, Jim, I get asked a lot, and I asked you the other day to pick a couple guys in the second half of the top 30 that intrigue you, that you like, because we almost never talk about those guys anymore, but they're pretty good prospects too, or they wouldn't be where they are. One guy you mentioned, let's start with him, Hudson Haskin, outfielder they drafted last year, number 39 in round 2, 39 overall. He's number 17 on MLB Pipeline top 30. What do you like about him?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think he would have gotten more attention had we had a full season. He was a sophomore eligible to land. So he really only had one real college season, and he had a pretty good summer. But I think teams would have warmed up to him even more had he had more time to play. So I think he flies under the radar a little bit as a prospect, even though he went 39th overall. And, it's kind of like, it's not the smoothest looking swing, but though, like they're just some guys who have like really good hand-eye coordination and feel for hitting, and the swing isn't the prettiest, but it works. And I think he's one of those guys, and he's got pretty good tools across the board. I think he's a potential 2020 center fielder. It could be, close to solid tools across the board when all is said and done. And again, we're talking about the kind of the history of the Orioles organization in recent years. That's a pretty good player, and he's 17. Like, I mean, I don't disagree with the ranking compared to like Yusniel Diaz. I think we have it 10 on our list. I don't have the list in front of me. Like, he might be a better player than Yusniel Diaz. Now, Yusniel Diaz is, he's had a kind of an up and down career since he got traded, and he's got some tools. But like, I think Haskin might have a higher ceiling. Diaz is a longer track record in pro ball because Haskin has yet to make his debut. But Haskin might wind up being better than Diaz when all is said and done.
Wow, impressive. 6'2", 200. runs well, fields well, has some pop, and put up big numbers at Tulane in the 2 years he was there. So some impressive stuff. And Jim, another guy you like, and you've told me this before, is Kevin Smith, left-handed pitcher, was in the Castro trade to the Mets last August. Kevin Smith and a player to be named later. He was number 12 on the Mets top 30. He's number 19 right now on the Orioles, a lefty who, when we last saw the minors, was pitching pretty well in 2019 at high A and double A.
Yeah, and it's funny because so like we do when I was at Baseball American, we did lists. I was editing the prospect handbook, and John Manuel and I would pretty much kind of vet all the rankings. Like we edited, and so we would move guys around as need be from talking to people. At MLB.com, MLB Pipeline, I can give advice, but I don't have to be listened to. And I think Joe Trezza and Jonathan Mayo, who kind of do our Orioles list, do a good job. But like personally, I told him I thought Kevin Smith was way too low on our list. I think he's at least 5 or 6 spots too low. And it's not because Kevin Smith went to Georgia and I went to Georgia. I was actually shocked they got him in the Miguel Castro trade. Like, no offense to Miguel. I just was like surprised the Mets gave him up. I think he's super underrated. He's got low 90s fastball, and the velocity that doesn't blow you away, but he's left-handed and he's got high spin rates and he's got that carry in the strike zone, and guys just don't hit his fastball. He's got a quality slider. He's got feel for changeup. He throws a lot of strikes. I think he's a high floor guy. I think he's got a chance to be a number 4 starter. I look at the lefties we have higher on the list. Personally, feel like he's got a better chance to be a number 4 starter than Keegan Aiken. Zach Luther fascinates me, and he has, because just with the extension and deception, guys don't hit him. But I think he's very comparable to those two guys. And me personally, and I'm probably in the minority on this, but when he was in the Mets system, I like him more than David Peterson. I didn't see David Peterson good in the fall league, so maybe that's on me. I can't get that out of my mind. But David Peterson was first-round pick, and he did have some success in the big leagues. I just think Kevin Smith has got a deeper repertoire and more command than David Peterson. So I think, I don't think it's just our list. I think people sleep on Kevin Smith too much. I think he's as good as not D.L. Hall, but any of the other lefties in the system.
Wow, pretty cool. It's a guy to watch this year, and when we get back to minor league games, that'll be fun. Jim Callis, MLBpipeline.com. Thanks so much for visiting today. Appreciate it, Jim.
Oh, yeah, great talking to you as always, Steve.